Welcome back to the sixth episode of the Hideaway podcast. My name is Winfield Jones. I am once again accompanied by Andy Shade, Andy,
Winfield.
and JP Fry.
What's up?
In the first half of this episode, we're going to be talking about the news cycle and how we've grown up in a rapidly changing news environment. View it. And let's just start off by saying kind of what places do you go to news regularly? Like, if you guys look at news regularly, where do you guys go?
I'll start us off, Winfield. There's just a couple places I go. I would actually argue, though, Winfield, I actually don't look at the news too regularly. I might check it once every couple of days. But what I've actually been starting to do is on my iPhone, I've gone over to there's a Apple News section on your iPhone, and it has all the top stories of the day, and it's like 5 big headlines of the day. I'll usually read those headlines, and if I find something interesting, I'll usually click on them and then go and read it further. But I think it's a pretty cool thing that we have access to that kind of just boils a lot of stuff down and makes it really simple to read, because obviously there's a lot of news being put out there right now.
Does Apple News do local news or is it just national news?
I'm pretty sure it's just national news.
We're Chicago.
Yeah,
and the
they'll have some
Chicago
stuff like that.
magazines,
It's
obviously.
a decently large city.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we have local news, but they don't do like hyper local publications, because I think those publications have to pay to get in, and I don't see the small town newspaper wanting to pay for that.
Yeah.
And JP, what do you do for news?
So I have a fairly non-traditional approach to news. So I typically go see what's trending on Twitter, but I don't look at the tweets because I just want to know what's trending because people are talking about it, which means news organizations are going to be talking about it. And then I'll go look it up, and then I'll read the headline from CNN, Fox, the New York Times, a bunch of big ones, and then I'll typically read most of the articles, unless one of the headlines is just utter clickbait, then I typically won't read that one. But I'll read all of the articles and then kind of compare them to see where they're similar and where they're different. Because I really like news for the similarities and the differences between the different news sites. I think that's what's kind of interesting about news today, is that it's not typically just the facts.
Yeah, that's the understatement of the century right there. I totally agree. I try to diversify as much as possible. My dad and I had a similar conversation about this, where he was lamenting that the news is no longer the news anymore. It's personality. You have the people who are on at a certain time frame on CNN, and it's no longer them just monotone telling you the news type deal. It's these peoples who are now allowed to give their opinions, and that's what people are watching. They're not watching CNN for the news. They're watching for the opinions and the personality and the talent behind it.
And same with Fox. They're watching, I think, is Sean Hannity on Fox
Yeah.
still?
I think
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, like
I think
they'll go and they'll watch like Sean Hannity's show. They'll go and they'll watch like these specific shows because they want to hear what they have to say. And it's almost turned into more of like a Daily Show situation.
Yeah, 100%. You only get actual news by going to the local station, and even then, so it's still kind of.
Do you know who owns most of the local stations?
It's one company.
It's one company. I think it's called the Sinclair Broadcast Group, if I'm not mistaken.
Mhm.
And they own, I think it's something 60% of local broadcast areas. And they have these must runs.
Yeah, they have the must shows and all that kind of stuff. And I don't know if you ever saw that one piece that someone did on YouTube last year, the year before.
I know exactly which piece you're talking about.
It was a montage and a collage of all of these different local stations, and they were saying the exact same thing about we are committed to independent news, being an independent news source. We are not listening to the higher-ups. We're not letting major corporations get in our way. And then it's just the same script all over the country that they're all reading, and I don't know how they thought that they'd get away with that.
Sharing of biased and false news has become all too common on social media. More alarming, some media outlets publish these same fake stories without checking facts first.
The sharing of biased and false
news has become all too common on social media.
This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
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 Those news anchors must have felt like pawns reading that because they knew exactly where that comes from.
That's the kind of stuff that breeds distrust in the news. And I think the news cycle nowadays is a huge source of why we have this podcast, because the news in its current form is dividing a lot of the country. It allows people to sit in their little bubbles.
I agree.
And you really only have, I know this sounds like tinfoil hat thing, but you only have realistically a couple companies telling you what to think. If you're left, you watch CNN or MSNBC or something like that, and they're kind of have this, they have agendas and they're telling you that, and you only listen to those people, so you hear that over and over again. But if you're on the right, you have Fox, you have God knows what else. That's really just Fox. But this constant feedback loop, that's why people argue all the time, because you have people say, well, I heard on CNN, so-and-so said this, and the other person said, well, Fox said this. And they're both news sources in quotes.
Fairly reputable.
Yeah.
They used to be.
They used to
fairly
be
reputable news sources as well.
Yeah, but they aren't. They're politicized now, and they're divided. They're part of how they make money nowadays is through being divisive. You're encouraged as a news company to be divisive so that you keep your audience, because as much as it seems to make sense to have a news station right down the middle, they report the facts, they talk about both sides, human nature doesn't want that. We want fighting, we want drama, we want back and forth. It's just kind of in our blood. It's entertainment for us. It's something that we're drawn to, and that's what makes money. So they're gonna be, for as long as we know, we're gonna see more and more divisiveness from it. I kind of agree with Annie with what you do. I don't really like watching the major players. It's kind of frustrating for me sometimes. CNN annoys me all the time with what they're trying to peddle. Fox does the same thing, where it's like, clearly they know
their audience, and they know who's watching their show, and that they know that the people watching the show, they kind of want to give them the information that they want to hear.
Exactly. You're not giving them the information that is there. It's the information, you're picking the information out of what is there and curating it for the people to keep them involved. So I usually look at Associated Press.
Yeah, all their articles are so short.
Yeah.
Because it's just like, this happened, this happened, this happened, this is when it happened, done. That's it. That's all they give.
That's the beauty of it. I think a lot more people should use the Associated Press. And the fun thing is, the separate channels use the Associated Press. They don't do a lot of their own reporting. It's usually the Associated Press, and people take it and then spin it, which to me is fascinating. That's how our news cycle works. Genuine reporting is dying in a lot of cities. You're losing out on that investigative reporting and the people who are really trying to get down to the truth of things.
Have you ever seen that movie? It's set in Boston, and it's about investigative reporting. And it was
it's Spotlight. Right?
Yeah, correct. Yeah. Yep. I had to watch that in a class, but we also talked about how investigative journalism, you don't see that anymore.
Yeah.
It's all about the quick headlines. Boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.
Because investigative journalism, that could take months at a time.
Yeah.
And you're not really wanting to dedicate money to months and months of research.
Yeah, news companies seeing that if we put this insane thing in the headline, people are going to click on it no matter what. Why would they want to spend a ton of money to pay this one person to do this one piece that by the time they come out with it, it's already 20 news cycles have passed. It from a business standpoint,
It's a
I
waste
see
of
it.
money.
Yeah, I see it,
It
but
is, yeah.
I think as a country, we're missing out on the smaller things that are going on in the country that don't really get a lot of light, and it allows a lot of things to kind of go unnoticed. And there was a good piece by, I think it was a podcast piece. I'll post it in I think, don't quote me on this, probably This American Life. It was about local newspapers and how the fact that now that we no longer really have major news publications in smaller places, stuff at the city levels especially in smaller cities, just go completely unnoticed. Because CNN, do you think they really want to report on the comptroller of this small city in Vermont? They don't care. That's not going to make them any money unless it's completely sensational. No one's
Funny story about that. So I am from a small town in New Hampshire where stuff doesn't make big news very often, but we used to hold this thing called the Pumpkin Fest.
Yeah.
Pumpkin Fest is a very large party, essentially, for the college age and young adults. But it's supposed to be, this festival is supposed to be, for kids and for having fun, walking around, looking at pumpkins, vendors and stuff.
Yeah.
But this one year, there was buses of college kids coming from Massachusetts, Connecticut, up north in Dartmouth, UNH, all over to come to this one party. And there were riots everywhere. There was cars flipped, burned. You can look up these stories. And my mom was so freaked out. She's like, you can't go outside. You can't go outside. And that was the one time there was legitimately, you could see snipers up on roofs.
Jeez.
They had to call in full SWAT teams. It was actually insane.
I gotta look.
You do actually have to look it up. I can find you some of the pictures, but that was the only time I remember my small town, making national news. And it was for something that was fairly, not catastrophic, because nobody was really injured except for the damages to there was a couple of rubber bullets fired off, I think, some tear gas. But other than that, nobody was really hurt in it. It just gave the city like a really bad name.
Mm-hmm. If some public official in your town decides to slowly take some money off the top, that's never going to go noticed nowadays.
No, never.
Compared to way back when there were a lot of individual and independent newspapers everywhere that had investigative journalists. That kind of stuff was always in check because you never knew when someone was going to start an investigation without you knowing. Now it's really only the police that do the investigation, but they have other fish to fry. And so stuff like that happens all the time nowadays without anybody really noticing. And it's just kind of sad to me that we don't see that. And I know it sounds like, way back when was better. I wasn't even around for that. But...
So we actually learned about way back when. So we have this idea that news shouldn't be biased, right?
Yeah.
We have that idea. But news has pretty much always been biased except for a very brief point in history, kind of around when we were born. There was a push for it to not be biased anymore. Because for years, you'd have these newspapers that had like the word conservative or liberal in the title, and it was designed for people of a certain viewpoint. And that's what it was for. And then I can't remember some president decided to say, hey, we should push for a more unbiased news. And it happened for a little bit, but I think we're really going back down the spiral again.
Looks like we've overcorrected, really.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, you're right, honestly.
I've never really seen much of Johnny Carson's version of The Tonight Show, but from what I've heard and what I've seen in my studies is that back then, I was biased. He wasn't a news person. He was a late night
entertainer.
Host. Yeah, but
he's a
But he was very good at being kind of bringing people together. And that was his one major thing. It was a lot of people would look to him because he was one of the only people you could watch and the only people you could pay attention to if you had a TV or whatever. There weren't that many places to go.
Yeah, there were only so many channels.
Yeah, that's true.
But because of his centrism and the way he ran his show, a lot of people in America, despite the biased news that there always has been, like you said, there was still a willingness to look at different parts and different sides, which I think we have definitely gotten rid of in most of, at least American society. You don't see people really talking across the aisle anymore, even in government, especially in government. That aisle is, there may as well be a wall instead of an aisle.
That's ironic. I love that.
Yeah, that is pretty good. It's very few and far between when people go across the aisle on certain things. It's rare. Although it may happen more than you think, because obviously this goes into what you were saying earlier though, about stuff that makes the news cycle. There are a ton of small bills and stuff that's passed by Congress and stuff that do whatever the small bills do. I can't really think of an example right now, but they don't make national news. Although congressmen from both the Republican and Democratic side will both collaborate on it and write it together.
It's typically not one of their, not clickbait points, but one of their talking points.
Yeah, the hot button.
Yeah, I mean, if they're not going to get any attention on it, like, there doesn't need to be a huge argument about what's right and what's not.
There's only a certain amount of political energy that you can have, and there's a lot of those little bills that you do see a lot of people coming across the aisle. And you saw that even with a bigger bill, people work together on the stimulus package that just came out. The first one. The second one, they started...
The second one's tough, yeah.
I forget where it was exactly, but I remember hearing about a state speaker of the House making people sit not on either aisle, like Republicans and Democrats, but they made them sit next to each other, interdispersed. So
like they had assigned seating.
So you go like Democrat,
that's great.
Republican, Democrat,
That's great.
Republican.
At the beginning, people are like, "Oh, this is awful. I don't want to talk to these inhuman people," and all these kind of things, because you have like this built-up rhetoric and hatred towards people because you're always at odds with each other. But what they realized pretty shortly thereafter is that the senators were starting to go out to get beer afterwards, and it was humanizing. It was humanizing each side, because now you were actually sitting next to the people and talking to them and realizing they're not just a face of a Democratic Party or the Republican Party. They're actual people that have actual opinions about things, and they were so much more willing to work with each other.
That's a really cool idea.
I think
that actually makes so much sense.
It makes a lot of sense.
That makes so much sense. Why don't they do that?
What state was that?
I forget. I think it was in the West Coast. It was probably either Washington or like Oregon or something like that. If I can find it, I'll post it in a link. It was, it's a really cool experiment. Throwing people together who have different opinions it really changes how people view each other, because you don't usually get to interact with each other. That's what I like about our group. We've always had varying opinions on things, but we've been pretty tolerant of each other in saying those opinions, and it's allowed us to kind of understand our different sides and that kind of stuff.
I think it's honestly because, we got to know each other before, ever diving into what each other thought about politics. And if you know the person, then you know that there's more to them than just whatever their viewpoint is. And for anybody, there's always more to the person than whatever their political viewpoint is.
Yep,
exactly.
And I think that people have really forgotten that. People tend to, at least I did a little research into this. People tend to stick to their social group that typically has the same ideals and beliefs that they have, and they don't really branch out. Then they automatically, let's say I am a Republican and I only hang out with my Republican friends, and that's like all I'm used to. If I see somebody that I know is a Democrat, let's say they're just like advertising it on their shirt or whatever, but you have these like preconceptions, even though you have no idea who that person is. And I think that that's just really, it's unfortunate.
Humans are built that way. It's like easier to like process things.
Because we group things. That's how we think.
But it's become very detrimental now. at least in the topic of politics. In other things, it's great.
Politics and news.
Yeah. But in politics, I think that's like the biggest issue that I've had with news at the moment. I mentioned in the second podcast, Philip DeFranco. That's a huge source of news for me every day. I watch that, and it's not, I don't get, some people solely get their news from him, which I think is okay because they're still staying informed, but you can still learn a lot from other places. And you can't cover everything in the 15 minutes or 20 minutes that he has a show. But he does it so well where he says the facts, but then there's a pretty clear delineation. Sometimes it's a little wishy-washy where it starts and where it begins, but there's a pretty clear delineation between fact and opinion. And he's always been so good at managing his community, all the people around in his community, in making sure that it's discussion and not argument. And that's just great for me.
I think going off that, though, is exposure to other news sources or just other opinions never really hurts you. It's only a thing that can either expose you and help you become more a well-rounded person, or just it helps you. It never hurts to be armed with more information.
You're also seeing how other people will be viewing these ideas, because you might view them a certain way, but let's say you go watch CNN and then you see how CNN or MSNBC and how they're presenting that, so then you might be able to understand how somebody else will see that and how they will react to that.
And to that is that when you're viewing other news sources, you have to remember that you yourself are a biased human being too. You have your opinions, you have your leanings. You have to go at it like a scientist almost. When I'm reading, I don't really agree with what Fox says, but when I'm reading Fox, I have to look at it like a scientist.
Absolutely.
And kind of observe instead of letting the feelings kind of take over, because like I could get angry at like some of the stuff that they've been saying about the virus. Oh, that's horribly wrong, or they're misinforming everyone. That's awful. But I instead look at their opinion and look at their viewpoint, and it helps. Like Andy said, the more information you have, the better off you are. There's never a situation in life where the more information you have, the worse you're off. I'd say 99% of the time that's true. There may be that weird 1% where it's like you shouldn't know.
You don't want to know.
Like you don't, like ignorance is bliss 1% of the time. But in most situations in life, knowledge is key. And that's what's cool about our generation, is that we have access to all that knowledge at our fingertips anytime, any moment of the day. And we
anywhere in the world,
exactly,
pretty much.
It's unprecedented. And I think it's hard because we've talked about this a little bit before, but we as a generation have grown up with it and therefore learned how to navigate it. But our parents and older really don't know how to navigate it and how to understand. And I think that's just something that
there's a learning curve to it, I think.
Exactly. There's still a lot of divisiveness in our generation, our specific generation. But I'm willing to bet that there's more people who are tolerant nowadays, because we have, whether we like it or not, you're going to be seeing on Twitter Fox and CNN and MSNBC and all that kind of stuff. Unless you block it all, you're going to be seeing viewpoints from every different side, no matter what. And I think that breeds a more open-minded person in general. And I hope it does. And I say the more I talk to people, the more I've noticed that. Whereas in older generations, you don't get that as much, unfortunately.
I think open-mindedness is a good thing to have. I think you really need to have both people when you're in a conversation. I think they both need to be open-minded. So let's say that one person is open-minded and the other isn't. The other person could construe that you are taking their opposite party's side just because you're open-minded to the possibility that could be correct. I see it with my parents, because I personally think that I'm more open and minded than they are. But let's say I'm open-minded and they're on this hard stuck side. They're seeing that I'm agreeing with the other side, even though I'm not necessarily doing that. I'm just presenting them with another idea or more information about it. It's
a double-edged
it's a two-way
sword.
street.
A lot of people nowadays are quick to kind of get ready and put their fists up in a fight.
Yeah.
And again, I think that's a byproduct of the news and just kind of the political climate we're in, because everybody's constantly fighting.
Yeah.
But definitely noticed it the same, where like I'm open-minded to them, but they're not open-minded to me or to others.
Agreeing to disagree and still being, friendly with the person
Absolutely.
afterwards, I think is key.
That's a huge aspect. And as the more people that can do that, I think the better off this world will be. And on that note, we're going to send us off to a break, and we'll be right back after. This episode is brought to you by Richardson's Brewery. Next time you're in a bar, whenever that may be, go up to the bartender and ask if Dick is on tap. If you'd like to support us at the Hideaway Podcast, go down to the link below and buy your own Richardson's Brewery shirt. Richardson's, it's what's on tap. Welcome back to the second part of the episode. My name is Winfield Jones, and I'm still joined by Andy Shade and JP Fry. In the second half of the episode, we're going to be talking about drinks. Not necessarily alcohol and all that kind of stuff, but just drinks in general. And before you click off, before you turn off the podcast, it's actually more interesting conversation than you would expect. Everybody has their own opinions. JP, what's yours?
Controversial opinion. I like drinking milk. I really enjoy the refreshing aspect of it.
Chocolate or normal?
Just regular, either 1%. I prefer 1% over 2%. I don't like whole.
I have a good milk story for you. I go to college, and all these kids from Wisconsin are just heavy milk drinkers. I mean, it's America's Dairyland. So obviously in the cafeteria and stuff, there's a milk dispenser. It runs out of milk all the time because just these Wisconsin kids just chug glasses of milk just nonstop.
Yeah.
I also met a kid from Massachusetts, never tried chocolate milk in his life, and the Wisconsin's kids introduced him to chocolate milk, and it changed his entire life. I'm not kidding.
Yeah, milk is right now a very Midwestern thing.
It is.
It used to be everywhere. That used to be, give your kid milk or he'll die. But now I say
Got milk?
Yeah, the Got Milk campaigns, but people have kind of shied away from it. We as humans, most of us can tolerate milk, but we're not. Most of us are
We're not
actually
designed to take another animal's product at all.
I think it's like 75% of the population is lactose intolerant in some degree.
Is that true?
Yeah, it's something insane. Yeah, you might be lactose
But
intolerant.
it's so minor that it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, you have a higher tolerance than other people. I think I'm lactose intolerant. Not that I really care that much. It affects me from
Still
time to
gonna eat
time.
cheese.
Yeah, still cheese and dairy products, yogurt and all that kind of stuff. That's good. But yeah, I remember when my sister posted a TikTok of my dad on his birthday getting a whole bunch of things, a whole bunch of chocolate. Got 2 million views. I think he said like 2.2 now.
Damn.
But there's a violent conversation in the comments about a glass of milk on the table. And people are like, oh, that's insane. Why would you drink milk? I never knew as a Midwesterner that milk was such a hot topic.
Over here in the Northeast, if you just drink straight up milk, you're weird, dude.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. Although JP mentioned it, and I think it's a good branch off a little bit. The milk supplements, so almond milk, soy milk, all those.
Yeah.
I had never tried them until probably 2 years ago. I tried, and they were giving these out for free somewhere. It was an almond milk ice cream sundae. So it was almond milk ice cream with strawberries in it. I was shocked how good it tasted. It was an ice cream form.
No, it was
actually
good.
really
I'll
good.
give you that.
I really don't like almond milk on its own. I think it has it's too nutty, which surprise, it's almonds, but like
it makes a lot of sense.
But like in ice cream, I loved it.
And the weird thing about milk alternatives is that a lot of them are actually worse for the environment than cow milk.
They're much more difficult to
They're
produce.
way more difficult to produce.
There's a lot of byproduct and a lot of pollution that's made because of those. It's such a good marketing thing where whoever came up with the marketing campaigns for almond milk and that kind of stuff genius because everybody thinks
Yeah, that
of
was
it.
huge.
Well done, sir.
Or ma'am.
Hats off to you. Completely changing people's perspective on things and convincing people that it's the healthy alternative when there's just no evidence for it is just insane. It's so cool. That's that's the level of marketing that I want to get to. I don't want to deceive people, obviously.
You want to invent
a product
that revolutionizes.
Yeah.
I just want to be
Something.
that convincing in something.
Yeah.
To have that amount of convincing power in that's just so cool.
Yeah, it is.
It's awful at the same time, but it's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't drink milk really all that often unless it's with cereals.
I don't even drink milk at all unless it's with cereal. But honestly, most of the time I eat cereal, it's dry. But there will be an occasional time that I.
Oh, that's
That's a topic for a different time.
I bet you're the kind of guy who puts the cereal
No.
after the milk.
No.
Yeah, you pour the
But you
and
can't,
now
you can't do that.
I met a girl who did that, and we would constantly make fun of her for that. Like
I saw that in the school cafeteria once, and I didn't know these people actually existed. I thought it was just a funny
joke.
meme.
Yeah. There's some people
no,
who do
they
it.
actually exist.
I don't understand it. It's an interesting. I get it kind of because you're not making all the cereal soggy at the same time, so you get a little bit of extra time. But it's still weird and should not be done that way. There's a reason you see it done the other way in all of the cereal advertisements everywhere.
Maybe the advertiser is just trying to tell you that.
Yeah.
All right, Shady.
All right,
Shady, what is your?
I want you to give me what is your favorite thing to drink and what is your least favorite?
On a hot day, I would kill for an icy slushy type thing. When I'm outside and I'm sweating, there is nothing better to me than just a Slurpee and icy. Honestly, there's nothing better than that feeling.
I like the different seasons aspects. Yeah.
I went rafting at the Grand Canyon for a week, and as you'd imagine, it was pretty hot. Coming out on the bus ride back from the Grand Canyon, we stopped at a gas station. I just loaded up on ices, and it was one of the greatest things I've ever tasted in my life. So when you're in the mood for that, it's always pretty good. One of my least favorite things to drink? Yeah, I don't know if it's my least favorite thing to drink. I have never gotten into ginger ale at all. I've never liked the taste. I've never found it. I've never been like, oh boy, I really want to crack open a ginger ale.
I suppose I can understand it.
Yeah.
Did you ever have it when you were sick as a kid?
No.
Oh, damn. I was going to do like some association stuff.
I saw that coming. But no. And then also a little bit of a hot topic. I am not a very big cola kind of guy. I don't really like Coke or Pepsi that much. I'll drink it.
Pick one.
If it's an option. I think I like Coke better.
Good man. Good man.
Correct. Good job.
I think I like Coke better. But I really just don't like the flavors that much. I'm actually just straight cola. And I mean, either of the two. Like I don't like... Although flavored cola, like cherry Coke, I'll drink. I just don't really like the base flavor of Coke, if that makes any sense.
If anybody knows me, they know that I like Coke.
Do you invest in Coke?
I do. I am invested I'm invested in the bottling. They're separate companies. So there's Coca-Cola and then the Coca-Cola bottling. But I can't drink coffee.
I can't drink coffee either.
It's just not.
I can only drink iced coffee, hot coffee.
But how much milk and sugar do you put in your coffee, though, JP?
At Dunkin' Donuts, I do 1 cream, 1 sugar.
Okay, not that bad.
Of course, you said Dunkin' Donuts.
Yeah, it's Dunkin' Donuts.
I'm from New England. It's
I am aware.
Starbucks.
I am aware.
Tim Hortons.
Yeah, I'm a big Tim Hortons guy. Don't you know?
It's actually really good.
It is really very good. Tim Hortons is... Don't sleep on Tim Hortons. It's popular in Canada and then Ohio.
And also a lot of northern New York. There's a ton.
There's so many in northern New York.
Because it's like basically Canada.
Do you know what the Canadians' nickname for Tim Hortons is?
What?
Like, go over to Timmy's.
Timmy's. I'm also have been and now still am a very big tea drinker. I always I don't really get it for caffeine, but I like the flavors.
Green tea is very good for you, I've been told.
Yeah.
What kind of tea is your go-to?
Lemon ginger usually. Yeah,
Yes,
lemon ginger is really good.
that's my pick.
Yeah, it's such a nice.
Is that hot tea?
Uh,
I take it.
yeah,
Then?
oh yeah, hot tea
Yeah.
all the
Yeah,
time.
I can't drink hot tea. I can only drink iced tea, and even that, I really only drink like Snapple.
I only drink Snapple peach tea.
Yeah,
if
it's good.
honestly.
Oh, what are our opinions on Arnold Palmer's?
I don't drink them.
I think they're really good.
Of course you do.
I do. I think Arnold Palmer
course
is
you
good.
do.
99 cents. You can't beat it.
What about Arizona?
On a nice. Listen, they're one in. I know that they're different technically, but when you're just like grabbing a can and you're about to go play the golf
Yeah,
course,
you gotta pick.
it's
Yeah,
the
it
same
is.
thing.
He's 100% right.
They are one of the best things to have on a hot
It is.
summer day, and I will stick by that.
I've never been a big fan of the cold teas like Snapple and Arizona and all that kind of stuff. It's just I like the hot teas because I used to when I was in Costa Rica we would actually go into the garden, cut ginger root and
Make
your
it.
and
That's pretty
steep
cool.
tea. It's super cool, and I had some of the best tea I've ever had in Costa Rica.
Did you like it before then, or not really?
Oh yeah, because at Makajuan, my first year there was a really big tea culture for some reason. There was just a couple of people who were really into tea and had these imported teas. So I learned a lot about different types of tea and what the different herbs that go into them and all that kind of stuff. And so I've always been kind of just loosely interested in it, but Costa Rica definitely ramped it up where I was, wow, this is really cool to make your own drink from plants. And it's really not that hard. You just got to get the separate ingredients and then throw them in a pot of water and boil it for a while.
My grandmother makes her own stuff, so
It's good. Getting homemade tea is underrated. But then I just normally, I'm usually drinking, you guys see me drink water or bubbly all the time.
You mentioned it. I'm not a big fan of flavored sparkling water.
listen. I love San Pellegrino. Have you ever had those things?
San
They're
Pellegrino is so good.
good. I have a couple downstairs, and I will be getting one after this.
As an Italian, whatever restaurant we go, do you have San Pellegrino or do you have any sparkling water? It's just a thing, and at least in
It's a
our family.
staple.
Yeah. And I think in a lot of Italian families, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, I love our whole family drinks sparkling water. It's a nice way of drinking water, and it doesn't have a lot of sugar and calories and all that kind
Really
of stuff.
shouldn't have any sugar. Yeah.
Well, because it's flavored, you do
there's some.
have some.
Amount.
Yeah, but it's nice. It's a different take on water because it's fun. The carbonation is actually relaxing to me.
Yeah.
It's a soothing type deal. Yeah, it's weird. It's always been that way.
I never thought about it like that.
Yeah, it's a cool sensation. I don't know if everybody knows what these are, but the Coca-Cola Freestyle things, where there are these machines where they have all the different bases of sodas, but then you can add these flavor shots in and all that kind of stuff. It's pretty cool. They're most everywhere now. What's your freestyle concoction? Shady.
I will go first. I have two. Sprite strawberry is fantastic.
Oh,
So good. Because I don't really like strawberry artificial flavoring as much, but for some reason I love the lemon lime in the strawberry. It makes it taste like really good. Cuz it's not an overwhelming amount of strawberry, it's just a little like hint of strawberry in it. And I like it. I think it tastes really good. The other one I really liked is so when I was in London, they had this thing, and I don't know if it's over here yet because I haven't used one over here in a little while. They had Fanta no fizz.
oh no.
Yeah. So if you try orange Fanta without the fizz, it just doesn't hit in the same way.
It's just a flat soda at that point.
It's so weird. I didn't know if that was even a thing, but apparently it's really big in Europe to have Fanta no fizz. So I tried that. It wasn't as good, but strawberry Sprite is definitely my go-to pick.
I get judged for mine all the time.
He likes milk and Coke.
Yeah.
Yeah. Weird story for after, but I'll tell you guys a weird story after. All right, for mine, I like Mellow Yellow.
Actually dig Mellow Yellow. I also enjoy Mellow Yellow.
Oh my god, you're like one of the first people that actually. You're from the Midwest, because nobody knows what it is over here.
I've never had different flavors of Mellow Yellow, but the original flavor is very
And
good.
I like the original one. I've tried the different flavors, but the original is just very solid.
Leave it to you to have all of the infinite combinations.
Yeah, and he goes with the Mellow Yellow choice.
We can't buy Mellow Yellow over here. And when most of my family's from Minnesota, like in the Duluth area, So when I would like go over for family reunions, we'd like land in Milwaukee and we'd like drive all through Wisconsin up to Duluth just
Yeah.
because a bunch of family is also from Wisconsin. So I would have Mellow Yellow, and because I couldn't get it over there, I just really liked it a
Mhm.
bunch.
That's good.
Yeah.
All right.
Mine is you get a basic Coke, right? And yeah, there's something to be said about like there's lemon and lime added together into the Coke. You don't mix Sprite with Coke, but the lemon and lime shots that you can get in them. You see it all the time in restaurants. They put a lemon in your Coke or whatever, or lime in your Coke or whatever. Mix them two together. Actually, really nice. And it's based off of my father's cousin. He, during med school, needed to figure out a way to stay up for really long amounts of time because med school, right? So what he did is he mixed Coke and Mountain Dew together. And it sounds awful, but in the right
really awful.
But in the right mixture, you have mainly Coke, but a shot of Mountain Dew, it's actually pretty nice. It's horrible for you. Do not drink that regularly or at all. But so the nearest thing that's marginally better for you, again, Coke isn't great for you, but is the lemon and lime shot in a Coke. Yeah, that is my freestyle concoction.
I'll have to try that because that actually sounds good.
It's really good. It's so good. Just a couple of taps of each of lemon and lime. So good. I think that's a good spot to leave off of. Thank you guys for listening to this week's episode of the Hideaway Podcast. My name is Winfield Jones, and I've been joined here by Andy Shade and JP Fry. If you have any feedback for us, please feel free to leave it at our Anchor page at anchor.com/hideaway or at our respective social media accounts listed in the description below. If you have a suggestion for an upcoming episode, please do leave a voicemail at the Anchor page. And if you like this episode, please do leave a 5-star rating on your podcasting app of choice and share it with a couple of friends. Thank you for listening to this week's episode. My name is Winfield Jones. Have a nice day.